Okay, we're rolling.
We're interviewing Mr. Wesley L. Varney at the Niagara Falls Armory. It is October 30th, 2001. Michael Akey, interviewer. Wayne Clark, videographer. Mr. Varney, where were you born?
I was born in Glens Falls, New York.
Oh, not far from
You know
us.
where that is?
Oh, absolutely.
Right there.
We were there a few weeks ago doing interviews.
In Glens Falls.
Mm-hmm. And did you grow up in Glens Falls?
No, just spent a few years there. My father had a job where he moved all over the country
Okay.
as a baker. So we lived in various areas such as Los Angeles, California,
Ah.
Rochester, New York, Cleveland, Ohio.
Well, you got around.
We got around. We did a lot of traveling. And so I was used to traveling when I was inducted into the Army.
You went to high school
Yes, I graduated from high school in Buffalo, New York.
Okay, okay. What was high school like back then?
What was the high school like back then?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it might have been a little different than it was here. You couldn't always get away with everything that you wanted to get away with.
Uh-huh.
They were quite strict even
Mm-hmm.
back in those days. I think it was 1938 that I graduated.
Okay.
And it was, homework and study and
Sure.
teachers. And of course, there weren't as many kids around then, not as many students as there are now, I presume.
A lot of them were working at that point?
A lot of the kids had jobs, they worked maybe in a store or something of that nature. There seemed to be, most kids had a paper route, things of this nature.
Right. What'd you do when you got out of high school?
When I got out of high school, well, I went to a business college and took up accounting, and I worked for an architect for about a year, just as a clerk, more or less. It wasn't much of a job, but kept me out of trouble. Of course, things were brewing in the war situation over in Europe, and so we were kind of preparing for that. We knew that was coming.
Now, do you remember where you were when you heard that Pearl Harbor had been attacked?
I remember exactly where I was. I was over in Canada.
Oh.
I was over in Port Dalhousie, Canada.
Mm-hmm.
I had a date with my girlfriend,
Uh-huh.
who's been my wife for 59 years.
Wow. So it was a serious girlfriend.
Right, that's right.
And you heard about it over...
That's where I heard about it. We were walking along the lake there, and all of a sudden this broke in. We had a radio, I think it was in the car, on the radio, and they talked about Pearl Harbor being bombed. It was hard to believe at first, we thought it was just some kind of a show or a play that they were putting on, but then we realized it wasn't after we got home and heard it on the radio.
What'd you think at that point?
Well, I felt the same as I have felt in the last month or so after this thing happened, September 11th. I was angry.
Yeah.
I was mad. I said, how could they do this? Why would they do this? How did they get away with it? Where were we? Why weren't we awake? Why weren't we on our toes? But nothing we could do about it then. At least we knew who was doing it.
Right. Knew where they were.
Yeah.
Now, so you were, after Pearl Harbor was attacked, you were you working still with the architect?
No. By that time, I was working for Bell Aircraft Corporation in Buffalo,
Okay.
making fighter planes, and I guess I was there for a couple of years.
What was it like at Bell at that point?
Bell, it was kind of hectic. I was working nights, and everybody was busy, We'd just gotten into this thing, or were thinking about getting into it, and it was coming. And it was a full production schedule I had there. My job was to see that parts got to various departments to be fabricated and manufactured. But I was only there maybe a little over a year when I got my draft notice.
So that wasn't a defense deferment?
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
It seemed like everybody was getting 4F or the other ratings, but I happened to be in the 1A class. But I was kind of gung-ho. I really wanted to go at that point. I said, why should I stay home? All my friends were going.
Where'd you enlist? Or where were you inducted?
We're in Buffalo, New York.
In Buffalo? Okay, and from then on, where did you go?
Well, we went from there to Fort Niagara. And we were there for 3 days getting our shots and indoctrination and the movies and so forth, getting us acclimated to what the Army life was like. We spent 3 days there. They had tents set up for us along the lake, and that's where we stayed, in the tents. And then when we left there, they took us back to Buffalo by bus, of course, and they put us on a train, a troop train, and we ended up at Fort Riley, Kansas, Cavalry School. Of course, it wasn't really the latest model of transportation. As a matter of fact, we used to joke and say, well, you know, we could see the arrow where the Indians had shot arrows at these cars, and you could see the whole. It was just a joke, of course. But it was that was all in the. We were young, you know. It didn't bother us too much, but it wasn't an ideal, comfortable ride at all.
What was basic training like?
Basic training was well, it was tough, but it was. We learned a whole lot. Sometimes I wish that more of us hadn't have done as we were told in that training.
Really?
We might have been alive to tell about it, because I saw some mistakes, and I made quite a few myself, because I didn't pay attention to the basics of basic training, which I think is very important, such as keeping your head down and your butt down, and being wide awake and staying sober. But basic training was good. They ran us around. We ran the obstacle course just about every day. We learned how to drive the different vehicles. And in our unit that we had, which was the 15th Cavalry Reconnaissance Squadron, we learned to drive all the vehicles. We had jeeps, armored cars, half-tracks, and light tanks.
What kind of armored cars?
Well, they had the M8 armored car that we had. Not in Fort Riley, though. All we had out there was a half-track. It wasn't until we got to Europe that we saw the armored cars.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with them or not.
Yes.
But my vehicle was a Jeep.
Yeah, the Jeep, with mounted up with a 30?
30 caliber machine gun mounted right here. I got a picture of one in there.
Oh, neat.
Right here. And it came in handy.
Now so you're with the 15th Cavalry Reconnaissance Squad.
Right.
You went through basic training, then you went through your cavalry.
We went through basic training at Fort Riley. I forget how many months it was. Then we moved down to Camp Maxey, Texas. And from Camp Maxey, Texas, we went out on Louisiana maneuvers.
Oh, you're on the Louisiana maneuvers. Oh.
And that was very interesting. They divided us up, you probably understand. And there was the Red Army and the Blue Army, and I was in the Red Army. And I guess the Red Army always lost, seems like, anyway. I was captured once or twice in that thing.
What were the maneuvers like?
They were pretty much, I guess, about the real thing. Oh, of course, Louisiana was a jungle country. You know, we had to watch for the snakes and chiggers and all of this stuff. But it was, in our outfit, it was mostly running up and down the roads, reconnoitering and so forth, and trying to locate the other side and so forth. We shot blanks. We had blanks on our machine guns and M1s, whatever we had.
So you were using your machine,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was all blanks, of course.
Right.
Thank goodness.
Was it, do you think, looking back on it, was it a useful maneuver?
I thought it was very useful, because as I said, it was very much like the real thing. You know, if you didn't watch what you were doing, or you were careless, where you could be in deep trouble. So it was. We learned that it paid to keep our eyes and ears open, or you could get captured very easily, or killed very easily, or wounded.
And after the Louisiana maneuvers?
Well, then they sent us back to Camp Maxey, and from there we went out to the desert in California. Desert Training Center. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't, but that was General Patton's idea.
How was that?
That was rough. That was out in the desert, and that's where you couldn't have any water unless you had a little salt in it. At least that happened for a couple of months until they found the colonel drinking fresh water without salt. Things changed. But that was that was good training. I guess they felt maybe we were going to go to Africa. North Africa was in going on at that time, but we never got to North Africa. When we went to Louisiana, we thought we were going to fight the Japanese.
What were the guys like in your squad?
The guys like in my squad, well, of course, the squad changed from time to time. Over here in this part of the country, they were like all the rest of us, you know, good, happy-go-lucky gentlemen, family men as a rule. And you got to learn about them, and you got to learn about their families, about their children, their mothers and fathers. Of course, they were always writing home, and then they were practically let you read their letters to find out what was going on. They had pictures and things like that.
Was this an older group? What do you think the average age was?
Oh, probably the same age as I was, about 21.
Okay.
21, 22, somewhere along in there.
So in some areas, you're old guys.
That's right. Yeah.
Interesting. Now, after your stint in Texas.
Texas, well, we went to this desert training center.
Okay.
And that was interesting. It was, you know, all kind of reconnoitering work. It was pretty tough, you know. You didn't dare leave your machine gun behind or anything, or you'd never find it again. If you did leave your machine gun behind, you paid for it. In more ways than one.
And after you finished training in Texas?
When we got in Texas or in California?
California.
California, that's when they put us on a train and sent us to New York.
Okay.
To the, where we were going to leave for overseas. And we left, we stayed there for 3 or 4 days, I guess. That's where we got our more shots and physicals and things of this nature. And then they shipped us over on that great ship, Queen Mary.
Oh, so you went over on the Queen Mary?
Went over on the Queen Mary. Of course, it was a very fast ship. I guess they made that trip in 3 or 4 days.
What were the accommodations like?
They were great. We were in the staterooms, but unless you were sick, then you slept out on the deck. But the Queen Mary was so fast that it couldn't go in a convoy.
Right.
Convoy went slow, and so this Queen Mary had to go by itself, no convoy. Although it was like a battleship, they had guns mounted fore and aft.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. They had that, and they had Canadians manning those guns.
Okay. What do you remember? What type of guns there were?
Well, they looked like anti-aircraft guns to
40
me.
millimeter, possibly?
Yeah, I would say 40 millimeter.
Okay.
Must have been 40 millimeters, and we had a sub come up one time, but Frank, that was an American sub, so it was no problem. But they took a zigzag course so that they would be a poor target for your subs. Well, of course, that made everybody sick. I think I was sick for 3 days of that thing, along with everybody else. Then we landed in Scotland. I forget the date. We landed up in Scotland, near Glasgow.
Right.
Of course, the guys are there in their kilts with their bagpipes and everything. And then they took us by train from there down to a place called Trowbridge in England, which is not too far from London.
What was
there? Let's see.
What was England like?
England? Well, they were, you know, they'd been for a few years under this war situation, so the people there, they were kind of down, but they treated us well.
Good.
They treated us good, and every once in a while you'd have a little problem with them, you know. Of course, you know what they said about us, you know, too sexy and too this or that kind of thing, which I didn't think was true. Of course.
Did you get any leave while you were in England?
Yeah, we had, I think I had a 3-day leave, and myself and 2 other of the fellows, boys, we went into London. Of course, when you went to a restaurant, you're talking about a restaurant you're in. When you went to a restaurant there, they'd give you something that was just like, you know, like sawdust almost, sausage. Not the best of food, but they had to realize that they'd been under this war situation, all these bombings that they had and everything, that they couldn't expect the best. But we spent 3 days there, and everybody treated us well. Buildings were pretty well shot up. You could see all the marks on the buildings of shrapnel that had bitten into them. So
did you do any training while you were in England?
Oh, yes, we did. Yeah, we did down business, did some more training, and landing our vehicles off a ship mainly.
Mm-hmm.
And we were taught how to waterproof these vehicles so that we could come off of these LSTs and go into water that deep. Of course, the vehicle had to be all waterproof.
Now, what type of, for your Jeep, what did you do to waterproof it?
Well, they had some material, it looked like asbestos, you know, like clay.
Mm-hmm.
And you put it around all of your spark plugs and all of the ignition and so forth. It was only good for maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and then, you know, you forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
But they had us waterproof, and then in the tailpipe they had an extension went up and out. And they had that for the armored cars, and all the vehicles had to be waterproof. Of course, the big joke about that is when we landed on Utah Beach, there was about that much water. We came off these ramps of this LST. You familiar with the LSTs, the large ship with the ramp? And came off and then said, okay, fellas, take the waterproof off. So that was, but it was good training. You never knew. You might have had to come off in this kind of, and they trained us when we come off that LST, it either turn left or turn right. You know, one guy might left and one right, so forth. So that's in case some guy didn't stall right in front. So,
Okay.
So that everybody could get off of that ship.
Oh,
but
interesting.
that was one of our jokes. All those. It was something like our gas mask that we carried to England and around, and we got into France on the beach there, and they said, all right, hide your gas mask over here, because they knew at that point that Germans weren't likely to get into any chemical warfare situation.
Mm-hmm. So, when did you learn in England that you were going to be landing?
We didn't learn, well, what happened there first is D-Day was on June the 6th, and our particular job at that time was to be down at Southampton to guard these people who were going to make this landing. And they were all behind barbed wire, the Canadians, the British, and Americans, for security purposes.
Oh.
Nobody was to send any letters out or get any letters or do anything that would let the enemy know about the date that they were going to make that landing.
So they're being pretty strict about the keeping the boys bottled up?
Oh, they were, yeah. Oh, they couldn't go anywhere. They stayed there for several days, I guess, before they could go. And we had to stand guard around these compounds, barbed wire compounds, one American soldier and one British soldier.
Why was that?
Well, I suppose, I don't know why that was, but that's the way it was. I suppose they had British and American in there, so they felt maybe they would respect having, might be better for the boys inside to know that they had an American as well as a British, and a British as well as American. But it was to show the difference between the British Army and the American Army. Some of their thinking is that when it came tea time, that British soldier could walk off and say, well, it's tea time, and he'd go and have tea. We had to walk along. It was strange, you know. But I'm sure they didn't do that in combat.
That's interesting. So you guarded the compounds prior to D-Day.
That's right.
So D-Day, they board for D-Day.
D-Day came.
What are you guys doing at this point?
We could hear the planes going over and all. We were still there, and then we went back to Trowbridge for further training and waiting for our turn to go to France.
Now, who was the 15th Cavalry Reconnaissance Squad assigned to once you...
You mean over in France?
Yes.
Or we were France, 3rd Army,
You were,
General Patton.
okay.
Probably heard of him.
I heard of him.
Blood and guts.
Now, when did you land?
We landed in, I think it was the 3rd of July.
Oh.
3rd of July we landed in Utah Beach, the 15th Cavalry. Actually, by that time in England, they took the 15th Cavalry Squadron and the 17th Cavalry Squadron, made them a 15th Cavalry group.
Okay.
So we became the 15th Cavalry Group at this point.
Okay.
And we landed on Utah Beach, and as I said, on that much water.
What was Utah Beach like at that point?
Well, it wasn't too much going on except many, many planes going over. There were, you know, protection. And of course you could see the devastation there. You could see some of the ships that didn't make it ashore. By that time, I suppose most of the bodies and the blood was cleaned up, although there were up on that little bluff, as I remember, going up Utah Beach, there were stacks of bodies up there, both German and American. They hadn't gotten around to, and that was July 3rd, but you only had 10 square miles of area that time when we landed. They'd only gone 10 square miles.
Now, as a reconnaissance group, squad, what were you trained to do exactly?
Well, actually, we were trained. They called us the eyes and the ears of the Army. So our training was basically to locate the enemy and to engage that enemy. That's reconnaissance by force. And then if we couldn't hold our own, then we were to call in the major bodies. That basically was what we were trained to do. We were trained more or less to find out where the enemy was, what they had, and what their deployment was, and how strong they were. That was our basic. We were all radio equipped, and we had to get that information back.
Each vehicle have a radio?
Yes, each vehicle had a radio. You know, each Jeep, each armored car, and half tractor. We all had radios.
What's the basic crew of the Jeep?
The crew of the Jeep, well, as I remember, there was myself and my driver, and we rode in the Point Jeep. That was the first Jeep. We wanted to be right up there where we could see that. Basically, it was only 2 men, sometimes 3.
Okay.
If we had a mortar squad, a 60 millimeter mortar, and there was 3 men in that one, as I recall, the driver and the 2 guys with the mortar. Armored cars, I believe there was 4 in that armored car. But there again, I wasn't in an armored car. I was in the Jeep right out there where I could see what was going on.
All right, you've landed in France, July 3rd. Where did you go?
We went from there. First of all, I have to tell you that I was putting out a outpost machine gun. Took 2 of my men out there. And I was a scout squad leader, and I took 2 of my men out there to set up a machine gun. And I kicked over this old log, and there was a bunch of bees under there. Came up and stung me right here. That was an omen of things to come. But and anyway, when we left there, I went to Cherbourg.
Oh, okay.
And up in Cherbourg, they had just captured that place, and we had to watch for the snipers. That was basically to kind of secure that city, and we stayed there.
Was that a difficult mission?
Yeah, that was tough. It was rather difficult. You never knew when somebody was going to show up with a Mauser or machine gun or something like that. There were still a few of them around, but it was more difficult for the enemy, I guess.
What's your rank at this point?
Corporal.
You're a corporal. Okay.
I was always a corporal. I mean, at latter years, I was a private like everybody else. I was a corporal. That's as far as I got.
Okay.
Of course, in the cavalry now, the table of organization, the corporal is a squad leader, same as a sergeant.
Oh, really?
That's right. So
it's a lot of
I
responsibility.
had about 8 men under me. Yeah, 8 men.
So you were basically in charge of what? 3 Jeeps?
No, there were 2 Jeeps. It varied sometime in combat. Really, you really don't. Sometimes you were in charge of an armored car. It depended on the situation. But basically, I'd say 3 Jeeps that the men rode in. Of course, we weren't always riding. Sometimes you had to ride up to where you had to dismount and go by foot to find out what you were looking for.
Now, after your mission at Cherbourg, what then?
Okay, then we went down, I believe it was about the 1st of August that we made the breakthrough. That, you probably heard about the breakthrough, right. And the 1st Army made the breakthrough there. And then they headed for Paris. And our job was to, we followed that breakthrough first. That's when we became part of the 3rd Army. Then they sent us to the right, and they sent us out into Brittany, if you know where that is. And that's where most of our operation took place, at least while I was still around to be a part of it. We went into Brittany, and our job there, well, we went in there about the 1st of August, and that's when we saw our first real combat. And our job in Brittany was to secure these cities along the coast, such as Saint-Malo, Saint-Brou, Morlaix, and Brest. We were headed for Brest. That was the big apple. We were heading
Submarine
for that area.
bases, were there submarine bases at Brest?
There were submarine bases there, and that's, I guess, one of the largest seaports around, even in the world. And the mission was to secure those towns and to liberate them, and up along the coast there, northern coast of France. We were a part of Task Force A at that time, and that was our task, was to go. There were connecting all of these seaport cities was bridges, and they wanted us to make sure that those bridges remained in our hands or secure and not blown up by the Germans. So that was one of our missions in that area. But we were Task Force A, which consisted of cavalry, tank destroyers, infantry, artillery.
Was it, excuse me, armored infantry?
Yeah, they were armored infantry. We were all armored at that time.
Now, so you're usually on the point.
Yeah, I usually was on the point. Yeah.
What was that, how did you feel about that?
Oh, it was great. No, you were, as I recall, kind of nervous to begin with, you know, after all. The captain called us over, he says, well, down this road, we don't know what's down there. So, Varney, you take your squad out, and I'd hop in the Jeep and made sure we had plenty of ammunition. Of course, I had a 30 caliber machine gun on my Jeep, and I had a Thompson submachine gun, and an M1 rifle.
You're loaded.
I was loaded, yeah. We were heavily, we had a lot of firepower in that little outfit. We're only 1,900 men strong, you know.
Really?
15th Cavalry. And I forgot what I was going to say. Anyway, we went up in this, along all these cities, and it turned out that they were going to use these cities for ports to bring in supplies. But they found out they really didn't need those cities for that purpose after a while, because things were going pretty well. That's when they had that Falaise Gap business, and the army, the First Army and the British had all moved down. They were headed for Paris, and we were headed in the other direction. But that was our job, and we had to contain these Germans in various cities. Some of them we just bypassed. They said it wasn't worth going in there and losing anybody. So, but that was our real main job, was that to take and contain the Germans and keep them. If we had any problems, well, then we called in the infantry, you know, and they'd send help sometimes. And they would take
Sometimes?
care of it. Yeah, they took Saint-Malo, and, well, Brest, I guess, didn't fall until the 19th of September of that year. So we bypassed all of those cities, except the ones that we could get into. And we had to watch, make sure all those roads and that were, you know, it was a very fluid situation.
Right.
It wasn't like trench warfare. We had to guard all those roads and watch for any of the Germans trying to come out and escaping. They were very good at putting down landmines and booby traps, and also roadblocks. And they put roadblocks up on these roads, and they'd use anything, cement mixers and old beds, furniture, or whatever they had, and old cars, and they make. But then on the side of these roadblocks, you think, well, you drive around, you know, but no, because they had those all mined over there on either side, so there was no such thing. So, but the roadblocks caused us a lot of trouble.
So what is your main concern as you're in the point? Are mines, or?
No, I kept my eyes pretty well peeled all over, I guess. We were concerned about the mines. We never had a big, I never did anyway. Some of our men did, though, on occasion. And booby traps they had little problems with, too. We lost a few men with that, picking up booby traps, even in Cherbourg there, before we even got started going anywhere.
What would they booby trap?
Just about anything, you know, like that little wallet there. Then they might booby trap that, or they might have a helmet over here, or a watch. They'd leave a watch and pick it up, you know, and you'd lose your head, or whatever.
So You learn pretty quick to be very careful.
You learn pretty quick, yeah, you learn pretty quick to leave stuff like that alone, you know, let somebody else pick it up if they wanted it to.
What were your officers like?
The officers, we had some great ones. We had 4 of them who were captains and lieutenants, and 4 of them turned out to be generals. Still active today, a couple of them are. So they were great men, but they were very good. I had the lieutenant in my troop, C troop. I had a good captain, Captain Ralston, and but the lieutenant who was in charge of the platoon, he said, don't do any drinking, you know, and don't lay down in front of any of these armored cars when you go to sleep or anything. But I guess he did that, and he ended up dead because he laid down in front of an armored car, and the kid got up the next day and took his foot off the emergency and got killed. You know, so there's just simple things like that. My driver got killed. I lost my driver. I lost another man in a mortar squad at one point. We had come off this one city of Loperhet was the name of it. Came down going across the bridge to reconnoiter, and all of a sudden they opened up on us. They were up on the other side of this bridge up on a hill. And I jumped on the machine gun. I didn't see anything, but I started firing in that direction, and my driver got out on. I could still hear his body hitting the ground. He got hit, and he was killed there. Then another kid by the name of Fermansky, and he was right from Albion over here. I don't know if you know where that is or not, but he was from Albion, and he came up behind me, and I could almost hear my name sounded. I thought he was starting to say Varney and then yelling something to me. And then all of a sudden I see this, you know, he was machine gunned right here, and he slumped over the wheel, and that was it. So I managed to, my machine gun jammed that time. It was the first time I'd ever done that. And boy, I was mad. So I jumped in the driver's seat and turned around, and there was a sergeant who was with us, and he was laying on the road next to a little stone fence, and he jumped in, and we got back to our own outfit anyway, which was about a mile or so away, and all the time these krauts were shooting at us. Came back with 3 tires shot off the Jeep, and had a hole in my sleeve right here, and the radio was hit, and but we managed out pretty good. But then they called the infantry in, and they were there for 3 days trying to clean it out. So it was that kind of a day. That's what it was like to be in the point. You never knew what was coming up. One other time, which was one of my better days, is that we were on this road, and we'd just come up over a little rise in the road, and just as we were, I looked down, and the road turned that way, maybe 150 yards ahead, and I could see these Germans, these troops running across the road down there. I think we caught them sleeping, you know, but I knew they weren't going to lunch. And so I fired right where I thought they were going, which was straight ahead, because they had all those roads zeroed in. The Germans had zeroed, they'd been there for 4 years. They had them all, they actually fired shots to find out what the rounds were going to land. And there was a couple of rounds landed next to my Jeep, about as far as that bench to my Jeep. And then I could see where they were firing from, so I let them have it right where I saw the flame of that gun. And I guess I hit the recoil mechanism and put it out of action. Man, a few of them got hurt pretty badly.
What was your general opinion of the German soldier?
The German soldier, well, they were just, I guess, like the rest of us. There were some that was good and some that were, you know, you just wondered about them. We had a couple of them that were real nasty guys. Well, I remember we captured some of them, and the captain was standing there, and we were trying to get some information out of him. And this one guy, he must have been an SS trooper, stormtrooper, and he spit right in the captain's face. And the captain took his gun out and killed him right there on the spot. Bad business. Then again, we meet some that were, you know, of course, they wanted to be pleasant because they knew they were on the wrong side at that point. Just like the guy that gave me that wallet there, he had that full of pictures, you know, showing me his family and everything. And I assured him we weren't going to kill him, but he insisted I take that wallet. So that's about the only thing I came away with.
So you were mainly up against Wehrmacht?
Yeah, that's right, Wehrmacht.
Any particular German armament that you had more respect for than?
Well, a German 88, probably heard of that one. That was the one that everybody had a lot of respect for. And they could do a lot of damage. They would fire at a plane, or they'd fire at a tank, or they'd fire at one man with that gun. Their machine gun was good, but I don't think it was really as accurate as it could have been. When it came to their rifles, why we used to just say, well, we don't even pay any attention to their rifles. They just weren't that. They had to work in a group, you know. Whereas I think the American soldier could go out singly or two or three guys and do the job. Where they had to have plans from officers just what to do. There were some that were very good, but most of them that we, at least that we were up against, I don't think they were the top-notch grade of people. I think they were left behind mainly to guard to be in those ports and to kind of offer us some resistance as we came through. Because I think most of the German army had pretty well gone to defend Paris or and gotten that, or I think they left, a lot of them left Brittany. Now a lot of those people in the German army, they were actually from Russia. They were the White Russians. They'd been people who had been captured, I believe, by the Germans and then forced to fight for them. Well, they were easy. They were glad to see us, you know. But there were some Russians. I remember when we first went into Brittany from Normandy, there were truckloads of German soldiers, prisoners, coming up the road that MPs were bringing in, and guys all looked like Chinese or Japanese. We learned later they were Mongolians, see? So it was very interesting things like that.
If we'd like to take a moment to change tapes.
Sense, you know, you saw what was going on.
Oh, absolutely. What was your opinion of your equipment, such as the 30 cal? And
30 caliber machine gun, well, of course, I kind of like that because I use it quite a bit over there and it seemed to be very effective and did what I wanted to do. I had the Thompson submachine gun and the M1 rifle, and those were basically the weapons that I used anyway. And,
pretty dependable?
Yeah, very dependable. Only that one time that the machine gun failed me, but I often wondered, maybe it was just as well it did fail me at that time because I might have stayed there. Maybe I'd have got hit like the other guys. So I managed to get it got me out of there, you know. I've often thought about that.
Now, you're moving pretty constantly. Were supplies, did they keep up with the movement? Food, mail, things like that?
Well, I suppose they kept up pretty good, you know. Actually, it was hard to find us many times. You know, you're on the go all the time. You could be down this road and you'd be down another road and heaven knows where, and it'd be kind of difficult to be have any normal operation that way. But we had nobody ever got hungry. Of course, there were a lot of chickens and wine and stuff like that, Calvados that you could drink, and champagne. I used to have 3 bottles of champagne on my floor of my Jeep and 3 or 4 hand grenades rolling around at the same time. I don't know which was the most dangerous.
Did mail keep up with you?
Mail kept up with us pretty good, yeah.
About how long would it take, you think, for a letter from stateside to come over?
Well, they had this email business at that time, you know.
The V-mail.
V-mail, yeah. That's right, not email. It's email today, but V-mail back then. And maybe took maybe 4 or 5 days, maybe 6 days.
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty quick.
Yeah, yeah, it was quick for us. So we had no complaints. So we weren't too much interested in getting mail when you're up at when you're on the point. You know, you just don't want to get incoming mail.
Yeah. What, any opinions of Patton?
Well, I never did see the gentleman myself. I never saw him, but I understand that he did his job. Old blood and guts, we call him. His guts in our blood.
He was a little more by the book than, particularly dressed than a lot of the
Yeah,
commanders.
that's right. And you used to have those 2 guns, you know, they had.
Did you get any leave at all?
Not from there, we didn't, no. No, because I was only in combat for two months. See, what happened to me was that we got out close to Brest. It was on September the 4th of 44, and on September 5th, we were south of Brest, and that's when I got wounded. And
What was that day? How'd that day start?
well, it started all right. The day before that, we were on the road, and we were looking across this river. It's a place called Crozon. It's a little peninsula that sticks out. I don't know if you're familiar with that area in France. Crozon Peninsula. And we were there observing, and I had one of these little telescopes mounted on a tripod down on the ground, and we could see across the river, and there was a big hill. It was the highest point in the peninsula of Brittany, and the Germans had some guns mounted up there. These 88s that you're talking about, they had those, and we could see them walking back and forth, and they must have spotted us because all of a sudden we took a round behind our armored car, so we got out of there quick. They knew that was the enemy there. On our vehicles, of course, we had control of the air at that time, but on the vehicles they had identification panels, big orange panels that you'd put in the back of an armored car so that the pilots could see that we were the good guys. And on our Jeeps, of course, the windshields were down with the covering over them. We had an orange panel on that. Well, I think these Germans could see those panels for one thing. They let us have it. But the next day, we were on the road again and making a little recon around the same area, and we decided to dismount. We were coming to a little crossroads, so I told the men, well, I'm going to dismount. Let's go up and take a look at this. And just as I did, they fired something at me. I don't know if it's the same group or not, but I could see these things dancing around on the ground, and all of a sudden everything was red. And I took a shot in here and knocked all my teeth out and got a scar. It spoiled my beauty. Then hit my leg, and I looked down, and my leg was right here, just above the knee. It was laying over here, and I was laying next to a hedgerow at the time. And my leg was at a right angle with the toes pointed down. I thought, oh, there goes that leg. But still in pretty good shape. But that was the end of the war for me. At that point,
How quick were they able to evacuate you pretty
my
quick?
men were right behind me, and what they did on these hedgerows in France, you're probably familiar with them. They had those hedgerows, big mounds of dirt, thickest on top of them, and they had gates, big heavy gates in between them. Well, a couple of men tore one of these gates off, put it down, and laid me on this gate, and they carried me back to the armored car, and then they got me over to the CP, and then they took me by ambulance to a field hospital, and then flew me back to England until December, and then they shipped me back to Atlantic City, New Jersey.
How was the medical treatment in the field hospital?
Hard to remember, but it must have been pretty good, because I don't have any pain to speak of from those injuries. Can't bring my leg back far enough, and have to have my teeth worked out once in a while. things of this nature. But by and large, they must have been pretty good. They must have been pretty good doctors at that time. And the field hospital, I can remember there too, because that was an interesting experience, because I laid on the stretcher and I looked up and I saw a German soldier looking down at me. And I thought, oh, I've been captured after all this, you know, but they were using them as helping them.
As orderlies.
Yeah. They were carrying they were carrying the letters around, so forth. And so.
That must have given you quite a start.
Yeah, it did, you know. I thought we got away from these guys. Thought maybe that ambulance driver took me in the wrong direction for a while.
So they sent you to England?
Sent me to England, and then I was in the hospital there, along with thousands of other guys, you know, big wards and everything, and a lot of them in a lot worse shape than I was in. And then on December, I think it was December 3rd, they shipped me back to the States on a hospital ship.
Okay.
That took a lot longer than the Queen Mary. That took about, I forget how long, but it was a long time.
What was the ride like in the hospital ship?
Well, it was not the greatest ride I've had, but you have to understand that I was in a cast, and this cast was a body cast.
Oh, really?
All the way from here, halfway down this leg, and all the way down this leg. A cast. They couldn't move. They had to do that because, you know, they couldn't, for shipping purposes, keep you immobilized, keep you there. That's it.
And you landed in what, New York?
No, we landed in South Carolina,
Oh.
actually. South Carolina, and then it took us by train up to Atlantic City, New Jersey, and there I spent until August, just about a year since I was wounded, and spent a year there. In August, I was discharged.
Good care in the hospitals?
Very good, yeah. Oh yeah, they fed us like, you know, ate like pigs in there. And everything you wanted, they took good care of us, and still do.
And you were discharged when?
On August.
No, I think August 29, 1945.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
Yeah, there we are.
Thomas M. England General Hospital, Atlantic City, New Jersey.
Yeah.
So were you mobile when you got discharged?
Yeah, by that time they'd taken the cast off, and I laid in traction for I don't know how many weeks, and then I was able to get up and walk. And when I got up and walked and looked down, it looked like I was looking 5 miles down, you know. And they let me come home for a while. Then they discharged me.
What did you do when you got home?
When I got home, well, I was happy to get home, and then I took a training on the job, kind of a deal. We went into the heating business, and I was in the heating business until just a couple of years ago. And I still have people call me to do the work.
So you're a busy guy.
Yeah, I was pretty busy. Well, I remember before I left the hospital, this one doctor, he said, get something where you're moving around. Don't get a desk job. It'd be better for your legs. So that's what I did. And I don't know if that was the best advice or not, though.
Seemed to work.
But it was healthy.
What's your general view of your military service? How would you summarize it?
Well, I would summarize it as, I think it was profitable. I think I learned a lot.
What'd you learn?
I'm sure it was, well, I learned, I was more disciplined, you know. I learned that I should do things, I should learn from other people. It's an older person, or like in the Army, I'm sure that I learned to be disciplined and to obey orders. And I think that's the best thing that I got out of the Army, and I still feel that way, you know. I try to do things, I try to do right by people, I try to do the right things. Doesn't mean to say that I always do, you know, make mistakes. But I would say, if I had my way, I would have every kid in this country go into the draft and serve in the military. just to learn to appreciate when he gets out of that military, his freedom.
Well, thank you very much, sir.
Well, you're certainly welcome.
Yeah,
Memorabilia?
yeah.
Yeah.
Show us what you got.
Yep.
Well, there's the wallet.
Do you want to hold it up and,
Why don't you explain how you got it and,
All right, this is a wallet that one of the German prisoners, German soldier that we had captured, offered to me. I say offered to me because he had it full of pictures of his family. And after we captured him and I was talking to him, and incidentally, I took French in high school, when I was in high school, and I think I was probably the lowest kid in the class. But I went to France, and I'm sure that it saved my life a few times, because a lot of these German soldiers, they'd been over there for 4 years, and they'd learned French, and I could speak French. We conversed in French. Maybe not the best French, but we conversed so that we could understand each other. And he would talk to me in French, I could talk, neither one of us could speak. He couldn't speak English, I couldn't speak German, except "Hande ho," "Comment here." So basically, that was good. But anyway, to get back to this wall, he had it full of pictures of his family, and he looked at my Thompson submachine gun that I was carrying here. I think he was afraid my finger was too close to the trigger or something, but he offered me this, and I said, no, I said, I don't want that. But he said, no, you take it.
with his family pictures and everything?
It was family pictures, that's right, just family pictures. He also had this in there. You know what that is? So he apparently had been
On the,
to the Russian front.
Right,
Yeah, so he might have been glad to
okay.
be there.
interesting.
But that's the only real piece of memorabilia that I had. The reason I had it is after I got shot and wounded and everything, they had a little bag of stuff that of my belongings, and this happened to be with it.
Do you have some photos in that album you
There's
can
some
show us?
photos here.
I
Now
can zoom in on those too.
here's a picture of our outfit in France, and that was taken in Wing Camp on 7th of August of 1944. It was taken by a Frenchman over there while we were
A
there.
little glare on that. Okay, that's better. Okay.
Is that your Jeep?
No, that's not my Jeep. That was a different troop, as a matter of fact.
Oh, okay.
You can see the Jeep, and you can see the machine gun there,
Mm-hmm.
and you can also see a couple of armored half-tracks in
Half-tracks.
there. But anyway, they had these pictures. We went back to France in '94, the 50th
Oh.
anniversary. My wife and I, and
Okay, got
quite a
it.
few others. We went on that. This is me in the desert.
I'm getting glare. Okay, that's good, that's good. Beautiful.
Yeah, we got all these other pictures. I don't know if you want to look at those or not, but other pictures of some of the boys that were in our outfit. They didn't allow us to take cameras over into combat, although I think some of them did sneak.
Now, the windshield on the Jeep is covered.
Yeah.
Now,
Down.
what purpose was the cover?
The cover to keep glare off.
Okay,
All right.
okay. Was it a canvas?
It was a canvas. It was a canvas. Yeah. And then they, on top of that, though, sometimes they would put these. Well, they did. They put these identification.
Right, there appears to be something on the hood of the armored car.
yeah,
Probably
yeah.
an identification
That's what it
panel?
is. That's right.
Okay.
Let me get a shot of that. Oh, okay, that's the one we had.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Now, how I happened to come by that is on this trip to France that we made back in '94, the 50th anniversary of D-Day.
Mm-hmm.
They had a bunch of pictures up on that they put up in this town hall, and these people invited us in to. Well, actually, we had all of these little cities I was talking about. They had They invited us, to come over, and they had receptions for us. We had 13 receptions in 7 days.
Must have gained a few pounds.
Yeah.
That's
wine
great.
and all that. Yes, yeah, they really showed their appreciation, those people in Brittany did.
Now, what
they
kind
were
of markings did you have on your Jeep? I noticed this one has, there's some markings on the front bumper.
15C, does it say?
Yes?
15C and probably B Troop on the.
Okay, right, it's
So
B3.
that's B Troop of the 15th Cavalry.
Okay, I noticed the half-track is named. You didn't name your Jeep, did you?
No.
Okay. Now, I talked to some recon guys, and they had more than a 30 mounted on. Some had a 50 plus another 30. Did you
Yeah.
ever see that?
Well, I saw it on different occasions, yeah,
Okay.
but ours was just like you see it there.
Okay.
It was a 30 caliber. 50 caliber would be a little bit awkward, I would think. You know, it'd be on a pedestal, I suppose, in the middle of the Jeep. I didn't like standing that high. I'd rather be a little bit low, you know.
Well, it served you well.
But that, speaking of the 50 caliber, that was the weapon that the Germans hated.
Really?
They said that was the best weapon we had. And you'll notice they're still using it today.
Yeah. Well, it had punch.
Yeah.
That's a great photo.
Yeah. The others are all just pictures of the boys, you know.
Now, are you a member of any of the veterans groups? Is
Just
there
about
a,
all of them, VFW and,
is there a 15th veterans group?
well, we have a reunion each year, believe it or not.
Oh, good.
We've had them for the last, well, I've attended them for the last 20 years. The reason I didn't attend them before that is I didn't really know they're having them. For the last 20 years, my wife and I have been attending.
Where are they usually held?
Well, they're held wherever, usually someone will be the host.
Okay.
Some guys from Mississippi or something will say, let's have it down in Mississippi, and then he sets up the motel and all of this stuff. And for a while, we were having maybe a couple hundred boys show up and their wives and friends. And this last one that we had was in Annapolis, and it was just at the time they had that thing in New York City.
Yeah.
On the 11th, it was the 9th, 10th, and 11th. There was only 18 that was there, 18 men. So that shows you the direction might be going. That doesn't mean to say that they're all dead, but I'm in communication with quite a few of them who sometimes they can't make the reunion, maybe they can't afford it, or maybe
Right.
it's getting to the point where their health seems to be the big thing. But it shows a camaraderie that we had. We were together so long, it became like a big happy family. I know the first time that I went to a reunion, it was held in the Poconos in Pennsylvania, and this one man came up to me, he says, I never thought I'd ever see you alive again. He says, that gate was that gate was a lot heavier than you were when we put you on it. They were a big monster gates, big heavy, you know. I don't know how they did it.
Did you get replacements while you're?
Yes, we did.
How were they generally treated?
The replacements, well, the one that I remember the most was a fellow that replaced my driver. And he came up to the front there just a few days before I got hit. And I said, well, load the machine gun up. And he didn't know how to do it. So he'd been in some other outfit, I guess it was non-combat, but anyway, they sent him, probably figured, well, he could drive a Jeep, well, he'd be all right. He didn't know how to load that gun, so I says, you better get back there and we're going to teach you how to load that gun and how to fire it. So we ran across things like that. I don't recall too many other replacements. We had a replacement lieutenant. He turned out to be pretty good. We had some real good men, highly decorated men. You know, they really earned their keep. You know, as I said, there was 4 of them turned out to be generals. They were just captains.
Well, it sounded like a pretty good unit. You know,
Oh, yeah.
Very efficient.
Yeah.
Well run.
Yeah. They called us Patton's ghosts, the Germans did.
Uh-huh.
They didn't know where we were. I don't think we knew where we were half the time. But it was very interesting. When I look back, I'm glad that I went through it. And I'm glad that I came out in one piece. And it helped me in my life.
No, very
Sure.
good.
it did.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Varney.
Yeah, you're certainly
It
welcome.
was a great interview. We appreciate it.
I'm glad you did.